Welcome to Suthichai Live English Podcast. While Kun Pichai Chinawachira, our Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, and his team is negotiating with the American authorities in Washington about Trump's tariffs, several stories have appeared that might affect the outcome of the negotiations between Thailand and America. First, there was this announcement by President Trump that he had reached trade deal with General Secretary of the Vietnamese Communist Party, To Long. 20% for all Vietnamese goods to America and 40% for transshipped products. Would this be the template for Thailand and other ASEAN countries as well? Then suddenly, there was this story from Washington this morning saying that President Donald Trump will start sending letters to countries on Friday. That is today, July 4th. National Day of America, too. Trump says that Washington will start sending letters to countries specifying what tariff rates they will face on imports to the United States, which represents a clear shift from earlier pledges to strike scores of individual deals. There's a big shift. So what's going to happen to Kun Pichai and the Thailand team in negotiating with the American side? Are we going to negotiate, or are we going to get a letter telling us you pay this rate of tariff, full stop, no more negotiations? So what does this latest development from Washington mean? Let's go to Ping and Pong, our AI team, explaining what exactly does this latest move by Trump mean for the rest of the world.
Okay, think about this. Global trade. We usually see it as, really complex, slow-moving stuff. But what if someone could just flip a switch, change the rules almost overnight?
Yeah, imagine a major player just deciding, we're doing this differently now.
Exactly. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into a pretty big, unexpected shift in U.S. trade policy. We're looking at President Donald Trump's new way of handling tariffs. It's a move away from those tangled country-by-country talks.
Right, the really detailed negotiations.
Towards what he's calling simple tariff rates, basically a flat percentage for most countries, cutting out a lot of the back and forth.
Simplifying things dramatically.
Our main source for this is a recent news report from CNA. It's titled, Trump Eyes Simple Tariff Rates Over Complex Talks, says letters going out Friday.
So it gives us a direct look at the thinking behind it, from the president and the administration itself.
Yeah. And for you listening, this isn't just abstract economics. Understanding this is key to getting a handle on global economic shifts, where trade might be heading, and maybe even, the prices you see on shelves.
Definitely affects the bottom line, potentially.
So let's dive in. Okay, let's unpack this. The heart of it seems to be this fundamental shift, right? How the U.S. deals with trade. What's the core change Trump's proposing?
Well, the really striking thing is how different it is from the original plan. The first promise was scores of individual deals, like tailored agreements with over 170 nations.
Wow, scores of deals.
Yeah. But the new direction, as President Trump put it, is to just notify most countries of a specific tariff rate, essentially skipping all those detailed negotiations.
So it's moving from custom suits to off the rack, basically.
That's a good way to put it, the standardized approach.
But why? What's the rationale? Is it just about speed, or is there more to it?
Well, President Trump was pretty direct about it. He said, we have more than 170 countries, and how many deals can you make? They're very much more complicated.
Okay, so complexity and time.
Exactly. It highlights just how incredibly complex and slow traditional trade deals really are. I mean, trade experts know this well. Those negotiations can drag on for years.
Right.
So the insight here seems to be that the sheer number of countries involved made the old way impractical for this administration. They're shifting from, let's say, detailed diplomacy to a more unilateral announcement.
A take it or leave it kind of offer.
Sort of. It definitely redefines how they plan to use economic leverage. A pretty big change in strategy.
And it sounds like they're moving fast on this. The report said letters will be sent to 10 countries at a time, specifying rates like 20% to 30%. And those letters were set to go out Friday, July 4th, 2025. That's immediate.
It is incredibly swift.
Yeah.
And if you put that in context, remember back in April, top aides were talking about 90 deals in 90 days.
Yeah, I remember that. Seemed ambitious.
Very ambitious. A lot of people were skeptical, just given the history of trade talks.
So this new approach is maybe a reaction to that timeline being unrealistic.
Could be part of it. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent chimed in too. He said about 100 countries are likely to see a reciprocal tariff rate of 10%.
Okay, 100 countries at 10%. Reciprocal meaning we tax them 10%, they tax us 10%.
That's the general idea, yes. And Bessent also predicted a flurry of trade deals before a deadline, July 9th. That's when tariffs could potentially jump up sharply for those who haven't made a deal.
A deadline to incentivize action. Okay, so Bessent says about 100 countries. How does that stack up against the original plan? Was it more or less?
That's a good question. It's actually a bit fewer than the initial list. The administration's original reciprocal tariffs list mentioned 123 jurisdictions.
Jurisdictions, so not just countries.
Right, it could include territories too. That list targeted a 10% rate and included lots of small countries, even, kind of oddly, Australia's uninhabited Heard and McDonald Islands.
Huh. Okay, uninhabited islands getting tariff notices. Strange detail.
It does seem strange. But it shows the initial scope was very broad. So Bessent's about 100 is still wide, but slightly scaled back from that very first sweeping list.
Got it. And the markets definitely felt this whole thing, didn't they? Back on April 2nd.
Oh, absolutely. There was that moment when Trump announced sweeping reciprocal rates, anywhere from 10% to 50%. That caused a bit of a tailspin.
Right. Uncertainty is never good for markets.
Exactly. He then quickly adjusted it, temporarily setting it to 10% for most countries. That was meant to give time for negotiations up until that July 9th deadline we mentioned.
So how are those negotiations going or not going?
So it's a mixed bag. The report indicates that many countries initially pegged for that 10% duty have not had any negotiations at all.
Just silence.
Apparently. But Britain is an exception. They actually struck a deal back in May.
Oh, okay. What did they get?
They kept the 10% rate, but also secured preferential treatment for some sectors, including autos and aircraft engines. So some targeted negotiation did happen there.
Interesting. So it's not entirely closed off to negotiation. What about major partners? EU, India, Japan?
They were initially facing much higher potential rates. The report mentioned 20% for the European Union, 26% for India, and 24% for Japan. Higher stakes for them.
And what about countries that didn't engage? You mentioned Lesotho earlier.
Right. The stick approach seems quite strong there. The source cites really high reciprocal tariffs proposed for countries not talking. 50% for the tiny mountain kingdom of Lesotho, 47% for Madagascar, and 36% for Thailand.
50% for Lesotho. That is quite a statement.
It really underscores the pressure being applied. Engage or face potentially very high tariffs.
Yeah, it's a very clear, maybe blunt message. It makes you wonder, though, does this kind of broad brush approach, applying simple rates everywhere, risk missing nuances, or maybe creating new problems?
That's the core question, isn't it? Simplicity versus complexity. It certainly streamlines things from the administration's perspective. But trade relationships are inherently complex. Different economies, different exports.
Right. But you mentioned there's still some room for deals, like Britain. And wasn't there a recent deal with Vietnam, too, just before these letters?
Yes, exactly. The Vietnam agreement is another interesting case.
How did that one play out? Did they get the simple rate or something else?
It looks like a more detailed negotiation happened there, too. It serves as one of those couple of more specific agreements Trump apparently still expects to make.
Okay, so what were the terms?
In that deal, U.S. tariffs on Vietnamese goods were cut significantly, down to 20% from his previously threatened 46%.
So better than the initial threat, but maybe not the standard 10%.
Correct. And in return, the deal stated that many U.S. products would be allowed to enter Vietnam duty-free.
Ah, so a specific quid pro quo, not just a simple reciprocal rate.
Precisely. It shows that even within this new framework favoring simplicity, engaging directly can still lead to a more tailored outcome if a country is willing to negotiate terms.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the big picture seems clear. It's a major pivot.
Definitely.
Moving from trying to craft dozens, maybe over 100 complex individual trade deals.
To a much simpler system of just setting tariff rates, driven largely by the sheer number of countries involved and the complexity of the old way.
And for you, the listener, understanding this shift is pretty important. It shapes the future of global trade supply chains.
And potentially the cost of everything from raw materials to the finished goods you buy.
Yeah.
It's about how countries trade, how that interaction is being redefined.
Yeah, a real reminder of how quickly these fundamental economic rules can change. So, the final thought to leave you with, the simpler approach, setting rates rather than negotiating deep deals. It definitely streamlines things, no doubt about that. But what could be the unintended consequences down the line when you favor that kind of speed and simplicity over the maybe relationship building aspect of complex negotiations?
Right. Does simplifying the process risk creating different kinds of friction or maybe undermine long-term stability?